Welcome to The Secret Witch Show, the podcast providing a safe and alchemical altar space of conversations which help powerful women escape a half-hearted, spiritless society and rediscover the freedom of living a wildly magical life. Every other week, we explore how to cast aside the wounds of shame, guilt, and fear connected with fully being yourself, so you can grant yourself permission to stop hiding, ground soulfully back into your body, illuminate your whole soul desires, tend your soul, rediscover and reclaim your powerful gifts, express your magic, and manifest your wildest alchemy. There's no better place to become who your heart longs to be. This is where we will guide you into liberation. I'm your host, Nicole Barton, and I'm so excited to dive in. Hello, magical ones. In today's modern culture, magical healing women are suppressing and ignoring the calls of their bodies in order to fit into ways of being that don't serve them, leaving them numbing their body screams and feeling unable to follow the call of their heart's desires to live as their wild and medicinal, truthful selves. So, I've created the path for those soul-healing, intuitive oracles to reconnect to their wild medicine woman. Beginning in January, we will be guiding you on the path of invoking your medicine woman to reconnect with the wisdom of your body to create a soul-led life honouring your wild truth. Find out more at www.nicolebarton.co.uk/medicine-woman. My guest today is Amy Lavinia White. Amy is a sexual healing and embodiment coach, crystal yoni tool provider, and founder of Temple of the Feminine. She is known for her enlightening and educational content on her social media channels on the concepts of masculine and feminine energy, as well as conscious sexuality for the mind, body, and soul. Amy facilitates transformative group courses, one-to-one mentorship programs, and her signature feminine awakening classes and sex magic rituals. In this episode, we dived into the magic of our sexual energy and how the witch wound and childhood trauma creates patterns of shame which create a disconnection from pleasure and desire. We explored the beauty of embodiment, being feminine and receiving the masculine, the magic of manifestation, and the powerful portal of sex magic ritual, offering some first steps into deepening the deeply important role of intimacy with ourselves that helps us to create magical lives. Welcome, Amy. I am so delighted to have you with us on The Secret Witch Show. You have a very wild witch energetic and lots of juice to share, so I'm very excited for this conversation.
Thank you for having me, Nicole. Really happy to be here.
Yeah, gorgeous. No, I'm very excited for this. So I guess the first place that I invite guests to begin is to share a little bit of their journey that would be relevant to this topic, I guess. So the topic of like how to deepen intimacy and manifest with the powerful portal of sex magic. So yeah, I don't know if that's a good place for you to start. But yeah.
Yeah, so wow, I mean the question about our own individual journeys, it almost could be like writing our life book, right?
Yeah, I know.
But I suppose how did I get to be sort of teaching sex magic and running these rituals every month for nearly 2 years now, at least once a month. So I mean, I came to this work, I suppose I was on my own spiritual journey, right? And particular catalyst was after my mum passed away. I started kind of searching for the meaning of life, really. And from that, I went on a trip to India to sort of deepen my journey with meditation and yoga and these sort of holistic practices. And I accidentally found myself on this Kundalini Tantra yoga teacher training. So it was white Tantra, which I understand to be, we're not directly working with what we would call sexual energy, but we were working with Kundalini energy, right? Super, super powerful. And when we start to work with energy, the two, sexual energy, Kundalini energy, Shakti energy, it's all energy, right? It's all this huge well of life force. And in this training, I started to have like Kundalini awakenings. I started to awaken and activate this energy in me. And started to feel massively orgasmic and really turned on. And so, and I felt it in this like really beautiful sort of spiritual expansive way, right? And so with all this sexual energy in me, naturally I wanted to pop back to my bedroom every 5 minutes and give myself an orgasm. And I would like be floating with this energy, just like orgasmic bliss, thinking surely all I'm going to need to do is like touch the pads of my fingertips to my body and I'm going to just explode with orgasmic energy. And to my dismay, this did not happen. And I realized that actually, I would get to go and sort of self-pleasure and connect to myself. And it really highlighted the patterns and behaviors that I had around sex and self-touch and pleasure. The minute I would start to kind of want to bring myself to orgasm, I would stop breathing. I'm in this training that's all about the breath, all about expansion, and I would stop breathing, get really goal orientated. Frustration would come in. I would need to fantasize, like become disconnected and unpresent with myself. So that just became really amplified. I was like, whoa, I'm feeling all this orgasmic energy. Yet when I actually go to connect to my own body and my own orgasm, all this stuff comes in, like all these really hardwired patterns come in, right? And I never really noticed before. And so I went on a journey, or like a 12-month journey of being celibate from connecting with anyone else and working with self-pleasure to rewire myself to pleasure, rewire myself to be present, rewire myself to breathe through pleasure, and reconnect to my body, to become intimate with myself, right? To reconnect back into myself, almost like relearn how to be with myself sexually. And then and this spurred and at the time I was doing sort of women's work and teaching women's work, and then this spurred my deeper explorations for me around in tantra and in sort of around the kind of the psyche around sexuality and energy work and jade egg work, yoni egg work, and in this, the practice of sex magic kept coming up, right? And so a lot of the self-pleasure practices that I was doing, I was also using as a sex magic practice. And then I thought, I want women to learn to be with their bodies in this way as well. And I want to find a way to bring them to a practice where they can experience themselves and their sexuality and their orgasmic energy in a way that they probably haven't done before. And I decided to start running the sex magic rituals, and they've just been profound, right? And then I kind of bring all the tools and practices and the concepts. Sex magic is a powerful manifestation practice as it is, and we might go deeper into the questions, but the way that you meet yourself sexually in a sex magic ritual encompasses so many elements that may be sort of hardwired in us that we want to undo to create a more expansive relationship.
Wow, there's so much in this. I'm like, where do I begin? Yeah, gorgeous. And wow, what a journey as well. I think where I want to go first, I think, because the secret witch who's listening, I suspect, will likely resonate most with this kind of disconnection from pleasure, disconnection from the body. So I wonder if there's something in that we can explore, because I think part of the witch wound almost is that the witch is kind of really disconnected from her body because she's had to be, because if she connected into her deep wisdom, then that would leave her wanting to express who she really was into the world, and actually that didn't, when women were being burned, that wasn't safe for them. So I wonder if there's anything in there to explore.
I am ripe and ready for this question, Nicole. I don't know how it's going to come out because it's like I'm a boiling like cauldron for this right now. To yourself and whoever's listening, I've just had Instagram have just told me they're taking away one of my features because of the work that we do. As a punishment.
Oh my goodness.
Just because I've shared content in the past that's been taken down for the sexual nature of it. A few people, not just sexual educators and therapists and coaches, but across the board, they're kind of punishing. It's a punishment. It's just it just came up saying on October the 25th, we're taking away your link in stories feature. And it just this is the witch wound, the modern day witch wound, right?
Wow.
I know that the witch wound runs deep, and there was in our past, in our DNA, it's etched in our DNA when it was like literally life or death. Being in your power could cause a death, a witch hunt, a death. And I just feel like it's still here in subtle ways. So and what bigger part of our lives is it present in than our sexuality? Right? This is one of the things that interested me, that kind of propelled me into this world as well, is that there's so much of the spiritual journey that is leaving sex out, right? And our sexual energy, and if we understand our sexual energy, as I sort of explained it and how I experienced it, as this like life force energy, this kind of vitality, our power, right? And the suppression of that is suppressing our power, suppressing our vitality, suppressing our full capacity to show up in the world. And it's so deeply embedded, like from the minute we are born, there is not a culture in the world that I'm aware of that is sexually liberated. Right?
Wow, that's quite a statement, isn't it? It's really interesting to me, because there's this sense that it's what it's speaking to, and a lot of the work I do is helping women get in touch with their desires. It's like the pleasure and the desires just aren't welcome. That's what I'm hearing.
No. That it's pleasure and desires aren't welcome. It's not safe to be a sexual being. We get shamed very early on, and I speak about sort of worldwide and culturally, right? And there's various different various levels of it. I actually used to think the UK was quite progressive and liberal. It is super prude. The UK is very prude, very like, oh no, don't go there, very kind of shove it under the carpet, where even as a child, as children naturally are connected to their sexual energy, right? They're just bouncing, playful, they don't have shame, they'll touch their genitals because it feels good, they'll rub it up against the sofa. Most children will get told not to do it. Most children will get shamed very early on, and will have this message ingrained in us: it's not okay for me to be in pleasure. Like, it's not even just when they're bouncing and full of joy and they're told to be quiet, it's like, oh, it's not actually okay for me to be this expansive and this much in joy. Right? Really, and that's just really at the very early ages. And then as we get older, whether we like it or not, we're heavily influenced by the subliminal messages through media, right? And I recently watched the Spice Girls documentary.
I saw that you watched that, and it inspired me to watch it too.
Oh, what did you think of it?
Oh my goodness, I was like, outraged.
Yeah. And these things were happening around me growing up without me questioning them, right? So just for the people listening, so first of all, I feel it's really important to know what's happening even if you're on a spiritual path and you kind of coming away from the mainstream, it's important to know what's going on in the mainstream, because you'll be absorbing it in some way, or would have absorbed it in some way, right? And so yeah, in the Spice Girls documentary, it's just how the media dragged them for being empowered, for being in relationships, right? For being outspoken, for being kind of, you know, that they were told they were like too sexy or not sexy enough. Their bodies were like under the microscope, too fat, too thin, right?
Taking
Our
up too much
connection to our
space.
body so taking up too much space, being too loud, too much life force, too much sexual energy, right? You know, and that's the witch wound here and now. And it showed a little clip in the Spice Girls documentary, but if anybody else is also familiar with what's been happening with Britney Spears and some of her documentaries, like, it got worse in the media in the noughties. Like, they were taking photos of women up their skirts and like wanting to just degrading women in sexual ways, right? So that's in the media. And then it's in porn, right? And there's no shame around watching porn, and there is some porn that is more ethical or shows some more realistic sides of sex, but it is often very much from a male perspective. And some, you know, many men will say that's not even their perspective or what they want. But there's quite a strong message in porn that sex is not about the woman, pleasure is not about the woman, and pleasure is about the man, right? And, you know, a woman being pleasured is for the pleasure of the man, and that sex ends when the man comes, right? And that women just are like fully orgasmic the minute, you know, P goes in the V, penis in vagina, you know. And then that filters out into Hollywood films, right? So there's this, you know, this image of sex being like rip off the clothes and we're all supposed to be up for it and super orgasmic.
Yeah,
so we get all these messages. Yeah. Add on top of that people's experiences of sex and pleasure that may be disappointing, like not meeting up to those expectations, harmful, right? Traumatic. So there's all these things that play out. Lack of sex education not being there. Absence is shame, right? When there's absence of information and things are pushed into kind of the shadows, it can create shame because we're like, oh, it's not there to talk about. That means I shouldn't be talking about it or doing it or thinking about it.
Yeah, I love that. And actually that shame kind of then, I think, almost like how we are, and I say this like with everything, but how we are in sex is how we are in life.
Yeah.
So that's how it feels to me, because the shame almost like then filters into everything. And when you were just talking about like being triggered by the Spice Girls, I was too. And then I'm also a big believer. A believer in shadow work. So I guess for me, when I'm triggered, it's almost like this golden opportunity to see all the areas where I can expand out of those stories. So in one way, it's also like it's kind of outraging me, but then I'm like, oh, what's that showing me about me and where I need to expand? And I think the thing about that is to see that those stories are outdated and we don't need to hold on to them. I don't know what your sense of that is.
Yeah, and I think it's a good indication of how these stories are internalized. And, you know, the more people that can undo the internalization and almost like purge it from the system, then there will be less power in those narratives and they'll start to melt away. You know,
I love that. Yeah, I had a sense that you also kind of had that point of view, because you were talking about the kind of hardwired patterns that you liberated as well. And I was just curious to go back to that actually and see what it was that you saw in the kind of hardwired patterns that you spoke to in your journey that you discovered.
Yeah. So do you mean the patterns that I've sort of undone myself?
Yes, yeah, you talked about right at the beginning in your journey, the kind of masculine ways of being there as well, I think you spoke to.
Yeah. So I mean, I can get really specific in like the kind of behaviors in how I related with myself. But there was I carried a lot of shame around sex. A lot of my sex was happening when I was under the influence of alcohol or drugs. And because, just having sex sort of sober was so vulnerable and so exposing for me. But then I'd feel a lot of shame about having sex when I was drunk or not able to remember, and those sorts of things happening.
Yeah.
Heavily slut shamed growing up as well, right? So, basically, if you're a woman and you have sex with more than one person, you're a slut, right? And that makes you less of a being, like less human. So it really, it's like you said about the way you do sex is the way you do life, like really, really impacted my self-worth. Really, really impacted it. And so there's a lot of undoing of that. And then there's the patterns that I was particularly speaking of were how I self-pleasured. So it was very kind of just stimulating the clitoris, like one area of stimulation, like sort of tension release, orgasm release, not sort of an expansive connection to self. I would also go off in fantasy. So I would almost like disconnect. It's almost like in my head and out of my head. Like that's where I would be to try and bring myself to orgasm. And I'd stop breathing. I'd almost like tense the whole part of my body. It's almost like, oh my God, if I move or breathe, I'll lose this. I just need to make myself orgasm. And that was the goal. And whether I was connected to my body or myself or my partner was irrelevant. So it was undoing that and saying, actually, staying connected to my body is what's most important, even if that means I don't have an orgasm in this moment or at this time, right? All that matters is that I stay connected to my body and what's actually happening for me instead of overriding it to try and get somewhere else. And that's been really healing, because a lot of some of the maybe sexual trauma I've experienced has been through overriding my body. And so it's been this journey of saying, do you know what, I'm choosing my body and what my body says and my body wants over my mind being like, I just want an orgasm. My body being like, clearly I'm not there. So can you stop sort of dragging me to that place and meet me where I'm at?
Yeah, wow, there's so much in what you've just said. It's yeah, my goodness, like just that deepening of intimacy. And I think, again, just going back to the witch ring, there's so many examples of how that shows up in that. And it's like that people pleasing, that kind of perfection, that lack of feeling safe, and the shame. They're all kind of aspects of the witch ring as well, and the way that kind of plays out. So yeah, really hearing this will be so powerful for witches, especially as we do realize that, as we said, how we are in sex or, whatever it is. I think actually it comes back to that kind of almost masculine, feminine thing. I think wherever there's almost like, I remember my coach saying to me, something around like how we are in the masculine is how we are in life as well, and the same for the feminine. If we're more in our feminine, we'll be more feminine in life. So maybe we can explore that a little bit, either now or later on, whichever. It feels like something around masculine and feminine in there, and maybe that's to do with opening to intimacy. I don't know if there's anything in that go to. Like, how do we go into being more intimate, more in our feminine? If that makes sense.
Yeah, totally. And I think it's really relevant. I love the concepts of masculine and feminine as a way of rewriting how we relate to ourselves and our bodies and sexuality. Right, because what I was describing, sort of this goal orientated, like friction based self-pleasure practice, where it's like rub, orgasm, done, goal over, done, get on with something else now, right? And it has its place. I've got to say that, like, where the way I work is like everything is welcome. There's no need to because what we don't want to do is add more shame to a space.
I was just going to say, we don't want to shame the masculine. No.
Yeah, we don't want to shame when you want to do those practices, right? And if it's working for you, great. And there is another alternative that could bring about some even deeper and more expansive experiences, but it may be different from what you know, right? And so if we look at like the kind of a feminine energy approach, it's more about like being with what is, right? Slowing down, connecting to sensuality first, right? So whereas maybe that other approach would be like getting to bed, hand down the pants, right? Which is often also what we see in films and things when a woman's, you know, with a vibrator. Again, no shame on vibrators, but they're very masculine, you know, hard, fast vibrating, right? And what if it was like a really slow, you know, full body massage, right? Connecting to the breath, taking time to connect to the heart. Give self a breast massage to open up the heart energy. The heart energy is deeply feminine, right? And there's a lot of pleasure there. Allowing space for when we want to connect to sexual energy and orgasmic energy, we're basically saying we just want to connect to our life force. And if we want to connect to our life force, we have to let that come up in whatever way it needs to come up. So your self-pleasure practice, you know, you can set an intention, but it may be that you're giving yourself a massage and tears come, right? And that's your practice for the day, right? Letting the emotions be present, really being honest with what's there, right? Some anger can come up sometimes, frustration, boredom. We can get bored with ourselves, and like really kind of accepting and loving yourself in that process, rather than I'm not going to connect to what I'm feeling, I'm just going to go in for the goal and get to the end, right? It's just another way of meeting yourself, and it's a way of deepening intimacy with self, right? The kind of masculine way will only take you so far, and when you bring that feminine approach to the body, really explore your vulva, your vagina. Like, have you really met all the folds and the flaps and the hairs and the different textures, right? Really meeting this part of your body, like giving it love and reverence, meeting every part of the body. And it's like,
I love that.
Yeah, and that's super empowering, right? Like to really know your own body inside out in that way is really taking the power back, like not giving that role of knowing your body that well to anyone else. Right.
And there's something, sorry, I was going to say, there's something coming up for me around almost there's this kind of beautiful polarity that's available between the feminine and masculine. When we are more deeply embodying our feminine, we're more also open and able to receiving the full masculine, and again that almost plays out in all aspects of life. I think just as an example, money, there's often a way that women are with money, myself as well at times, is like just this real lack of willingness to fully embody the feminine and allow ourselves to receive money. It's like, I don't know if you can get to what I'm kind of trying to explain here, but there's like this beauty of allowing ourselves to be in the feminine and allowing the masculine to be fully masculine, as to receive that, if that makes sense.
I mean, another huge part of the feminine, like you said, a huge aspect of the feminine is receive. And it's absolutely necessary in pleasure, sex and pleasure, right? To be able to fully receive. For vagina owners, that you're receiving inside the vagina, like, you know, even just knowing where you're at in terms of what level of receive you're at, so that you can communicate that and consent fully to what's happening, right? Knowing your body's capacity for receive. And I suppose to say, you know, that a lot of us have a lot of contraction and resistance to receiving. We often feel, again, it can be a lot from our conditioning, that if we are receiving, we have to give back, or we have to give first. And I am of the opinion that you cannot give and receive at the same time fully. You have to be fully and that's, I mean, we can kind of, when we're self-pleasuring, we're obviously giving to self and receiving, but say if we're in partnership, one has to know what they're doing. Like one has to fully surrender into receiving. There has to be someone else giving, right? And to fully give, that other person needs to fully be in receive. So yeah, that relationship is super important. And this, the same with money. You've just got to let yourself, it doesn't mean that you can't ever go in the give role, but just be in receive. Let yourself receive without having to give, and then you can give at another stage. You can be in that pole in another stage. But that practice of just also, you know, the physicality of receive is so surrendered, it's so soft. And when you soften and surrender, your sexual energy can flow and move more freely. So you're likely to experience that more expansive, almost sort of, you know, different states of consciousness through sexual energy, like, because it can just really permeate your whole being.
Gorgeous. It's like there's sex really offers us that real deep opportunity, I guess, to get really intimate with being vulnerable as well. That's what I'm taking from that. It's like, yeah, we can really learn to receive, which obviously takes courage, I think, as well. So maybe there's something to talk about in kind of like fear and courage. I don't know, is there anything you've got to offer on that? Because I think probably the secret, which is listening, who are like, yeah, I get that, but then how do we actually move into kind of embodying it when it's so scary?
Yeah, and this is a really good question, because a lot of what we're talking is the embodiment, right? And so we want the body to feel safe to expand, right? And so I always say start with self, right? Start really exploring with yourself before moving into it. And you can be doing both at the same time, exploring with a partner, but have your own self practice, right? Because the minute we're with someone else, we add another energy in the space, and there's another element to navigate, right? And so when we're talking about the body, I'm going to talk a little bit about the nervous system, because what we want is the nervous system, right, to be regulated, right, when we're kind of, you know, and a self-pleasure practice can support us in regulating the nervous system. Right, if we're kind of feeling shame and fear, that's going to come up in the nervous system, and we can use self-pleasure to move through that, right? We can start using that to soothe ourselves. But what I would say is start, if we're working with a self-pleasure practice, reconnecting to the body through that slower feminine approach of connecting to sensuality, slowing everything down. What we want to do is really move with and work with our nervous system. So there'll be many steps and processes in that self-pleasure practice. When we feel ourselves becoming overwhelmed by something, shame or fear, just stay there. We meet that. We don't go any deeper. We don't push ourselves to then kind of meet the next stage of penetration or this, that, you know, you stay where it's like, poof, I'm feeling something big here. Can I really be with myself in this? Can I really love myself in this? And hold myself until my nervous system learns that it actually is safe in this moment, because you would have created a safe space. So when the body's feeling like I'm unsafe and you're just with yourself, you know that you've got you know that your body is safe with you, but it will be remembering something of old, like all the way when it was touched and met this way and it wasn't safe. So you can support your body in learning and in relearning that actually it is safe to be here now.
Yeah, that's so gorgeous. It just perfectly speaks to the process that I share as well, and it just gorgeous. Thank you for that. And I think now it'd be good time to go into sex magic, because that feels just the next place to dive into. So I think maybe the best place to start would be to explain what sex magic even is. I think that would be helpful. I remember my own coach saying to me about this, and I was like, what? But I was like, I'm definitely down for that.
Yeah. Yeah, so sex magic is using this sexual energy, our creative energy, to manifest, right? So when we're talking about manifesting as in, you know, in real simple terms, manifesting is this notion, this concept, this sort of universal law that we are creators of our own lives, right? So whatever we are intending, embodying, thinking, feeling, it is likely going to be matched by the outside environment, right? We're going to be in a resonant, a vibrational resonance for whatever vibrational frequency we're in is going to be matched externally. Okay, so once we know that, the whole body of sort of manifestation and law of attraction, that body of work is based on the understanding that knowing this means that you can set or manipulate or create an energetic vibration for that you want to bring in. Right.
This is so crucial to the witch, because the witch is really a powerful creatrix, and she may not even know that. So what tends to happen in the witch, the secret witch specifically, is that she will be manifesting and creating usually what she doesn't want, because she's not aware that she can just harness her focus intentionally to begin to create what she does want. So yeah, that makes total sense.
Yeah. And you know there's so much to it. There's like whole coaches around manifestation, and there's so many practices and so much to it. But just to get really, really real, because that's where I like to come from, like it's not possible for anyone to always be in their conscious awareness, to be holding exactly what you want all the time to get it what you want, right? We mostly are just going around on autopilot, and so we're going to naturally attract what's in our subconscious and what's on our autopilot. So what we do when we want to manifest is create these pockets of like concentrated ritual. Like a ritual is what sex magic is, but these concentrated moments of like, okay, I'm going to just sit and be in this vibrational match, because all day I know that I've not been aware, or I've been doing this and that. So you create practices to set your vibrational inner world to match that which you desire.
I literally love how you've just explored that, because the work that I do really is all about kind of shadow integration. So that's exactly what you're talking to there. It's like we are pulled back by shadow, unconsciously integrating what we don't want. But as we do more and more work, it becomes less and less likely that the patterns that we continue to, that we used to have are kind of, it becomes easier, but there's still always some work to do that's unconscious. But the power of ritual, I love the way you just explained the power of ritual being like this little pocket of real intentional magic.
Which can be sort of tenfold what your subconscious few hours strolling around subconsciously energetic vibrations worth. Do you know what I mean? So when we it can counteract. So don't worry if you feel like a bit shit throughout the day. It's not necessarily that you've messed up all your manifestations. But so and where the sexual energy comes in is that, as I sort of shared earlier, our sexual energy is our strongest force of energy available to us, and in its purest form, it is our creative energy, right? I'm going to say this and then just caveat it. So every single one of us came into being through an orgasm, through sexual energy. But then actually there's a lot of I know that's not necessarily, maybe it is. I know that there's different ways of creating children now, but essentially somebody had to come, right? Right, so sexual energy had to be present, right? And sexual energy is that creative energy that you see in nature, right? Nature is like inherently sexual, right? Inherently like fertile, right? And it's like life and death and right? So anyway, so our sexual energy is our creative energy. In a sex magic ritual, we create this sort of container, pocket, like I said, like this pocket of time where we're going to hold our intention, our manifestation in our awareness, bring ourselves into energetic alignment, and then raise our sexual energy and charge that intention up with our sexual energy, with our creative energy. You know, and I speak about like when we're fully in our sexual energy, we're in like vibrational resonance of nature, of the entire universe. We're almost, I don't know if people listening on Unicorn have ever been like that point just before orgasm. It's like there's no separation, like you're just in this sort of oneness state, right? And that is like to in sex magic, we just cultivate that energy, we keep cultivating that energy, and holding it behind our intention, right? Just trusting the process, you know. And in that,
it was quite funny because when my coach first mentioned this, she was like, oh yeah, and she explained it to me. I was like, oh, I've been doing that anyway. I thought that was just normal. So it was quite amusing.
Yeah,
like, it's maybe like I should do it intentionally now.
Yeah, well, that's it. It's a self-pleasure practice, and you hold it, you know, but you bring in the intention to manifest. And it can be like a job, a new home, but you can send it out into like, you know, like peace, love, you know, to shift the kind of energy of the collective, right? We could just imagine like sending all that like pure loving life force energy out to the world. Although I must just say as well, responsibly, you shouldn't send it out to anyone in particular without their consent. Yeah, because it's powerful, and as we know, like, you know, energy knows no time and space, you know. So if you're sending, you know, you can't send your sexual energy out to someone who doesn't consent to having that sent to them.
That's an interesting one.
And so I also would say, really, if we're being really responsible, powerful witches, we shouldn't fantasize about self-pleasure and fantasize about people who haven't consented.
It's actually quite interesting if you think about it, the stories that people are thinking about when they do orgasm. What is that creating in the world?
I mean, you know, if you keep masturbating to self-pleasuring to your ex, you know, when we think about things like cord cutting practices, when you're literally sending your sexual energy to someone, you're creating a new cord, you're solidifying cords, one of the most powerful cords you can create, right? And so you've got to treat it like magic. You've got to treat your sexual energy like magic, and take responsibility for it as well.
I really love that. It's such a powerful practice, and I did join one of your sex magic rituals, and it was amazing. So I'm sure that the secret witches listening at home will join you. Gorgeous. So much in this.
And you know what, it's a space where, you know, I say about like being responsible, but ultimately, you know, if you find yourself drifting off and fantasizing, it's not the end of the world. Our intention is the most important thing, right? And it's a space where we just let everything come up, right? So as you start to work with sexual energy as well, the shame will come up, right? Some, you know, grief around things will come up. You know, if you start to move that energy up the body, any kind of crystallized pockets of energy that are like a stuck emotion, stagnant emotion, are going to start to come up. So there's you know, it's deeply healing, it's powerful, it's also like a conduit between yourself and spirit, right? Sexual energy becomes this kind of messenger between yourself and spirit. You're almost like communicating with source through your sexual energy. And I feel like it's like the energy comes from the earth and it's in your pelvis, and then you travel it up through into the crown and out, you know, and it's the conduit, it's the thing that connects you to everything, right? Nature, earth, body, spirit, and then life force energy is traveling through them all.
Yeah, it's such a good point. I think I always say that we're kind of co-creating between soul and spirit in this life. There's like so many spiritual traditions, and I call it kind of the path of ascension, where it will just almost be the aim to evade the body, to transcend the body. And for me, it feels like magic can only really happen in a body. So this kind of work that you're in, for me, feels like that really juicy way of co-creating the life that we really desire. And yeah, without the body, it feels to me that it's just not possible. So yeah, I really love what you said there.
Yeah. And that's really like the feminine approach, the masculine is very sort of transcend, right? Consciousness. And when we take that approach again, it's like the suppression of the feminine, right? The feminine is the body. And we came into this human form to be in our bodies, and for me that's my work, is to be more and more embodied, not to go, I did, I was previously a bit perhaps more sort of transcend, and at this moment, at least in my life, it's like, and I really need to know this body that I'm in deeply. And there's so much wisdom in the body, so much wisdom.
Yeah, I love that. And it also feels juicy to me to be in the body. So
exactly.
Yeah, gorgeous. Well, are there any kind of, if people are thinking, oh, I'm not quite sure how to begin this, I guess you've talked a little bit to that, but are there any kind of first steps, small steps that people can take, or small rituals that they can maybe do?
Yeah, sure. I begin to start bringing some movement into the body every day, right? Just being really present with the body. Maybe start to kind of like circle or rock the hips and open up the chest and breathe with it, right? And just see what, and maybe allow sound to come out with the breath. So breath, sound, movement is the most powerful way to get into the body, right? And just notice how that feels when you just start to breathe and move your body in sort of non-prescriptive ways, right? And just start to really feel what it is like to be in your pelvis. Like, what does it feel like to be you in your pelvis? What does it feel like to be you in your chest, in your heart? Right? And then start to connect to the senses around you, like slow things down in any given moment. Like, what can I see? What can I touch? What can I smell? What can I taste? What can I feel? Right? And see if you can really deepen and expand every sort of sensory moment. So a great way to do this would be like your favorite food, right? We often kind of eat our food, it's like yum, 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 done kind of thing. What if you could make that like a sensory experience to the point where it's like, this is so pleasurable because all my senses are online and engaged, and I'm just dropping deeper and deeper into that.
Yeah, I love that. That's gorgeous. And that feels like something accessible, I think, for secret witches, for sure. Yeah, beautiful. Just seeing if there's anything else. It feels like maybe that's a good place to end, actually, unless there's something else that you wanted to speak to. Is there anything else that you want to add?
Just also letting yourself feel on this journey. Often we move into this sort of sexual pleasure journey expecting to be orgasmic and in pleasure, but what I also invite people to do is to shift and expand their understanding of orgasm to include any strong sense of energy. That can be emotion, sensation, right? Like embracing that as our ability to feel and live, and to be turned on to life, like be turned on to life force energy, right? As much as as much as you may want to have this like expanding, knee-jerking orgasm, you got to be willing to have this heart-wrenching, heart-cracking well of grief come up as well. You have to render yourself to energy. You have to tap into yourself as an energetic being, and that brings a well of emotion.
Yeah, I love that you added that. It feels to me like a big part of the descent into the body, really. And yeah,
Yeah.
it's all so welcome, which it wasn't always for me. But yeah, more and more that is becoming, yeah, so welcome. Gorgeous. Where
Yeah,
can
have to remind
people,
ourselves all the time.
yeah,
Okay,
yeah,
I can feel.
yeah, absolutely. Where can people find out more about you and the work that you're doing at the moment? Because I think it'd be useful for them to know where to find your stuff.
Yeah, sure. Well, I'm going to say the first place now is to go to my website and sign up to my newsletter. So I'm starting to send them out regularly, and they are unfiltered, juicy pockets of information, sometimes anecdotes, sometimes offerings, sometimes just what I've been up to. Yeah, so please come and find me on my newsletter. And you can find me also on Instagram. There's a lot of information there. I'm at Temple of the Feminine. My website is templeofthefeminine.com. My website has a lot of information as well. It's got all my podcasts and it's got some blog posts as well. So
Is that where they can find your newsletter?
Yeah, on the first page there's a sign up. So
Okay.
there's plenty of content to get stuck into. Yeah.
Gorgeous. I will put all of that in the show notes as well so that people can find you. And yeah, this has been so illuminating and so, yeah, such a gorgeous exploration, really juicy exploration actually, and especially the bit about, for me, like how we are in sex is how we are in life. That feels like a good gem. Yeah. So thank you so much. That was
Thank you, Nicole, and thank you for everyone listening.
mm.
Yeah, I hope this sparks some sort of sexual burst of energy to start awakening up to this, because we really need it. We need it now, and we need it quick, and we need people turned on, and we need people turned on now.
Yeah.
So yeah, really welcoming
Gorgeous.
everyone onto this journey, and the more of us that can do it together and know that we're not alone, and the more we can create those safe circles and communities, the less shame we will feel, right? Shame dies when we share our stories in circle, when we come together and we realize we're not alone. Shame dies. Like, it's not you, it's something outside of us that was put on us, and we're here to change that.
You're literally healing the world through sex. This is perfect.
Yeah.
Amazing. Thank you so much, Amy.
Thank you, Nicole. It was lovely to speak to you.
This show was juicy and I loved it. My takeaways are: as women, we have been culturally encouraged to disconnect from our bodies, and from that we have created stories around pleasure and desire being wrong. This plays out into our creation of life, feeling shame if we experience self-pleasure or even joy in life. The witch wound plays into this avoidance, creating us to hide and keep ourselves small so that we aren't outcast for being powerful, magical women in our full power with sexual energy. Because of the shame we feel, we avoid the intimacy required in life to create magic by being vulnerable. There is a lot of fear around being in our power, and we dissociate from intimacy with our bodies. Our triggers around shame offer opportunities for us to make conscious ways that we hold ourselves back from our power and magic. Being intimate with our body via self-pleasure offers us liberation of all the places that require liberating. Shadow work is a really powerful way of liberating our unconscious patterns. And yet, our sexual energy is our life force energy. It's the source of all creation, so it's really important to deepen intimacy with this aspect of ourselves. There's a real power in embodying the feminine polarity, especially with regards to embodying our capacity to receive, which is important if we want to manifest our desires. How we are in sex is how we are in life. Generally, whatever our ways of being and triggers are with sex are often the same triggers that show up in other areas of our lives. For example, if we can't receive the penetration of the masculine, we can't receive the penetration of money. Sex magic is a powerful ritual which offers a little pocket of intentional and conscious focus on what we desire to manifest. And we can start small. There are some powerful first steps into the body in this episode. If you'd like to get the show notes and links for everything we've chatted about in this episode, head to www.secretwitch.co.uk. If you know a secret witch who would love this episode, please share with them to help them liberate themselves. And so you don't miss out on next week's episode, head to your podcast app of choice and hit subscribe. Thank you so much for listening. I'll see you next time.